Some of the world's biggest companies will today explain why they pay so little tax in Australia. Google, Apple, Microsoft and News Corp are appearing before a Senate inquiry into tax avoidance. We're his reporter, Anne Barker. And who's given evidence there so far?
Ros, we've heard firstly from United Voice, which is a union that represents some of the lower paid workers in Australia, cleaners, contract workers, hospitality workers and so on. Now they've talked about the scale of tax avoidance as they see it in Australia. We've heard different figures, in fact, depending on how you define tax avoidance. For example, they're saying that 30%, 33% of the top 200 companies in Australia are effectively paying only 10% tax and 14% are only paying zero. The top 900, they say, pay an equivalent of 19% tax. And they're saying that that is obviously far less than the average worker in Australia. Labor Senator Sam Dastyari, who's chairing this inquiry, has said that $60 billion goes offshore each year from companies in Australia. Not that that's illegal, but that it is a form of profit shifting, which is something that's been talked about a lot in the inquiry so far. We heard from the head of the Australian Tax Office, that's Chris Jordan. Now, he was asked some very tough questions, in fact, about one particular transaction where 10 resources companies in Australia were shifting something like $31 billion to Singapore, and he declined to name those companies. In a letter to this inquiry, in fact, he's claimed public interest immunity for not naming those companies and says that the Treasurer, Joe Hockey, in fact, endorsed that decision. The Green Senator Christine Milne has asked a lot of tough questions about why shouldn't Australian taxpayers know who those companies are. She's called for a lot of changes to legislation, to regulations and so on, to make it more difficult for companies to shift their profits offshore, or at least to make the system more transparent. So big multinational companies in Australia, for example, will have to disclose what subsidiaries they own, which companies, which countries they're in and so on, so that there is a lot more transparency. And Chris Jordan has said the main message he gave to the inquiry today was that the tax office is doing everything it can to clamp down on tax avoidance, or at least to make the system more transparent and more reputable.
Regarding multinationals, my message is that we are doing everything we can within existing laws to ensure multinationals pay tax in Australia on their income they earn here. We have more specialists than ever before working in our internationals area and have strong leadership and capability to deal with global issues.
And Anne, what are the big guns, Google and so on, expected to say when they appear?
That's right, Ros. Google and Apple and Microsoft are all appearing before this inquiry this afternoon. I guess you would expect that they will be saying that they do obey Australian tax law, that they're not doing anything illegal, even though they're making enormous profits, and perhaps their profits are, as I said,